the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
What's a terrific way to reach a big group of supporters with just a small budget? Well, emailed fundraising appeals just might boost your fundraising right now during the busy giving season. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Kara, fundraising coach at Donorbox. We're here each week with practical actions you can use today to increase donations and take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. My friend and colleague, Kara Schmid, is the content marketing manager here at Donorbox, and she is our resident expert on email marketing. I'm so glad she has joined me today because we are going to ensure that your email campaigns deliver maximum impact and minimum stress. Hey, Kara, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
In episode 86 of the podcast, we talked about conquering appeal writing anxiety, and we talked through the art of crafting compelling fundraising appeals. So that got me thinking, not having a plan in place to deliver those beautifully written fundraising appeals, whether it's direct mail or email, could really derail all that hard work. Today, let's talk about delivering those appeals through email. So let's say you've invested so much time in writing an awesome appeal. How can you leverage it for maximum impact? How do we make our email appeals really stand out and then inspire action?
You are so right, Kara. I know writing those appeals takes so much time, so much effort. And the great news is you can really take that appeal and move it through email as well as your other communications. But speaking specifically to email, you're right. Email appeals are truly so very powerful. And the biggest advice I can give for emails is to personalize them. So yes, of course, that means adding in their preferred name, in the salutation, in the body of the email. You can even put it in the subject line. I know that really grabs attention because this makes it feel a little bit more like it's an email to a friend and not a mass email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. But beyond that, this personalization can be based on what you know about your donor. So that means you can write the letter directly to your donor based on their segment. And by segment, I mean you want to group these donors based on common factors, whether that's the last time they gave, their average gift size, if you have several programs, the program they tend to give to, or anything else. And then again, tailor your message to appeal specifically to that audience. So why do I say to really do this in email? That's because email is relatively cheap compared to direct mail, right? So you have more wiggle room in your budget when it comes to creating a different email for each segment. So you can really get down to that nitty gritty, making those changes because you're not spending as much money as you are with a direct mail piece.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So personalization is key. But what about the content itself? What can we do to ensure that our email appeals just really hit the mark?
Content is truly where that magic really happens. So take the best elements of that appeal letter and rework them into your email appeal. You don't have to start from scratch. You can use that same golden thread message, that same beneficiary story that you used in that appeal, and adapt it for email. And that also means you can adapt it for social posts. Again, I know today's focused on email, so we'll stick with that. But do remember that consistency is essential. So not only are you not having to do extra work by coming up with this new message, you're actually helping your campaign because your donors are seeing the same message from different angles so that it's going to resonate more. The more times they see it, those additional touch points, you're really going to hit that message home.
Right. So the more times they see it, the more they're inspired to take action. Sometimes it takes 7, 10, 12 touches, touch points to see before they actually decide to give.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. An email can be one of those or several of those touch points.
So how should we structure the email appeal just to make sure that we're getting the message across effectively?
Sure. So actually the structure of your email appeal can be fairly similar to an appeal letter. I like to say the biggest difference is you're going to go a little bit shorter, probably. You can also go a little bit more casual. So just like your appeal letters, you want to really start off with a hook. You want that strong sentence that's going to pull the reader in and make them want to keep reading. So we used to talk about above the fold, or with direct mail pieces, we still talk about above the fold. What are they going to see before they even unfold your letter? Or the newspaper, what are they going to see before they unfold the newspaper? This is before the scroll. So before someone scrolls, you want to make sure that they're seeing a great hook, a great piece of content that's going to make them keep going, keep scrolling. And also make sure to make the ask. You want to make that ask more than once, and one of them you probably want to put before someone has to scroll. Many nonprofits shy away from straightforward asks in their emails, but that's actually a big mistake. So you really want to be explicit with what you want your donors to do. Again, just make sure those asks are clear and put them throughout your email. Again, before the scroll, I usually like to make sure it's also in a button somewhere in the email, just 2 or 3 times. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I get this question a lot with our Donorbox clients. How many times should we ask, or how many times can we have a call to action within just one single email?
Sure. So you can do it 2 or 3 times within an email. Again, above the scroll as a button, I usually link, and you should have a photo in your email that really tells the story. You can link that photo to your giving page, but also make sure to include a link in your PS.
Mm-hmm.
The PS is a brief summary of your ask, and it helps you make sure that your message is clear.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if your donors skim the email, they're going to know exactly what your email is about and what you want them to do. And make sure, again, to include a link to your giving page as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk timing. Is it too late to launch our email appeals, or can we still have an impact?
Oh my gosh, Kara, it is never too late to send an email.
Good.
That is what's so beautiful about emails is unlike direct mail letters, you don't have to, you're going to spend a little time crafting your message, right? And you might spend a little time building your email list and maybe building it in an email designer, but that's it. You're not having to send it to a printer, wait for them to get your proof back, approve the proof, wait for it to go to print, and then wait for it to go to the mail house, and then wait for it to hit the mailbox, right? So emails take a lot less time. The benefit to that is that you can make them sound more urgent, and you can use that to your benefit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I recommend starting now with at least 1 or 2 emails that highlight the impact of your donors' gifts. Don't even make an ask, just refamiliarize your audience with your mission. Then make sure you're taking the time to do your donor segments, plan out your messaging, spend time selecting or sourcing images and videos that will really resonate with those audiences, as well as stories that will go with them. Remember, reuse that story from the direct mail if you can. And ideally, you should also spend some time designing your email with colors, graphics that create that cohesive brand identity across your campaign. But if you're listening to this a little bit later, you're on a tighter schedule, again, you still can send an email. And I really want to encourage you to, no matter what, even if it's in the last 3 days of the year and you're like, oh no, I forgot email, make sure you're sending at least one giving season appeal email. You never know who may have missed your mailing or may not really respond to direct mail, but they will respond to an email appeal. If you're in this last minute, personalize when you can, yes, but still really focus on the story and the message. It's still better for you to send a really good email with a really good story versus even if you don't have time to do all that segmentation.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then again, use that sense of urgency to your advantage. So make your supporters know that you're on a limited deadline and ask them to give.
A lot of people think that it's one and done. Just send an email giving season and be done with it. But what's the ideal number, and how does that even affect results?
I always recommend more than one email. Remember, again, and we're going to probably say this so many times, but it typically takes multiple touch points for someone to give. And not everyone is going to open every single email anyway, right? So definitely make sure you're getting multiple emails into those inboxes. So at minimum, I recommend 3.
Okay.
So 3 throughout your campaign. So the first one's your kickoff email. For a giving season campaign, that should fall usually around Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday is usually a good time to kick off. And then the second one is a mid-campaign reminder. Send an update about where you are in hitting that goal. Remind people of your mission, of what they can do to help, and then send the final reminder. So for a giving season campaign, that's in the last 3 days of the year. The last 3 days of the year are the biggest fundraising days. So make sure that you're sending it out and reminding them. But if you do have time, if you do have the capacity, I like to say that there's a few additional emails that you can send out. you don't necessarily remember your giving season campaign doesn't have to just be all about appeals. So throughout an end of year campaign, I usually like to sprinkle in a happy holidays from your staff for your beneficiaries, a mid-campaign thank you video showing your donations in action, maybe a request with a call to action to share your campaign on social media. Not everything has to be an appeal to donate, but you're still going to be reminding people of your mission, of your impact, and that you're there.
Yeah. And when you do those things, sometimes the ask gets a little easier. People are more inspired to give.
Exactly. But I do want to say, make sure you are removing contacts from your appeal emails once they have made a gift that giving season.
Okay.
You can still keep them in those definitely keep them in the happy holidays and the thank you emails, but take them out of those email appeals so that they're not feeling like you're asking them over and over again, even after they donate.
Great advice. Okay, let's address a common challenge. So December is a crowded month for email inboxes. How do we ensure our appeals stand out among all the emails that donors receive?
So many emails. It really is so hard to get people to open emails sometimes. So how do you stand out? You make sure that you craft an attention-grabbing subject line. So a lot of times I actually spend almost more time on the subject line than I do on the body of the email. And that's because if no one opens your email, it doesn't matter what
right? Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it says inside, right? Having a really good subject line really increases the chances of your email being opened and read. And you can do that by kind of hinting at the contents and the purpose of the email. Kind of make it's a quick preview of the email's contents, be a little mysterious, kind of get them to want to open it. So a good example is open now to ensure no child goes hungry.
Ooh, I like it.
Something like that it's not too spammy, but it still is like, oh, what do you mean? How can I do that? How can I make that happen?
Yeah. How could I even do like, hey, Kara, open now to ensure no child goes hungry?
Yes.
Okay.
And I love that because it's really putting the onus on the reader. Like, oh, they need me. They need me right now.
Yeah.
And then also once you open the email, remember that design does matter. So I know in our podcast episodes and a few of our webinars that we've done together, Kara, we talk about appeal letters. They don't really need a lot of design. Emails are kind of the opposite. Well, you don't have to go, all super crazy with your design. A nice eye-catching email really helps get people to read through it. Use those email templates. You should be using an email marketing tool, hopefully.
Like MailChimp or Constant Contact.
Like MailChimp, exactly. MailChimp, Constant Contact, Active Campaign. A lot of them have really awesome email templates to get you started. Change out the colors. Make sure you're using your brand colors, your logo, and then also make sure you're including some great imagery and some videos as well. Bring in those readers.
Yeah. Well, those are fantastic tips. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. Those email appeals are really a fundraising must-do this season. You have to send them if you want to raise money, right?
You really do. It's another touch point. It's also some of your donors are just going to respond better to email than they are to your direct mail piece. Or maybe they got your direct mail piece. They were like, oh yeah, I'll respond to that. It got lost in their pile of mail. And then boom, 2 days later, they get an email from you and they're like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a link right here to click. It's so quick. Yeah, it's a must do.
Well, I know our listeners will appreciate that. And for our listeners today, Kara and I have a very special free gift for you. You could head right on over to the show notes to check out some templates that Kara and I created for you to use for email and social media this Giving Tuesday. But really, you can adapt them and use them throughout your giving season. Just switch them up a little bit every time you send them. Thank you again, Kara. I say let's go get those emails written and on our way to raising money this year end.
I know that this time of year is really stressful and we're all here behind you and we're rooting for you and you guys are going to have a great giving season.
Yes, we are. We're rooting for you. And as we close this episode during this very busy giving season, I do want to say thank you. Thank you for choosing to spend your time today with the Nonprofit Podcast. I hope you've left with the confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. Be sure to click the download button on your podcast player, then leave the Nonprofit Podcast a review or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube. Your review really is a great way to help others find us. You're here to help others. We're here to help you. So until next time, stay inspired.
That warm feeling when you help someone, It's not just happiness, it's fulfillment, and we believe it should be available to everyone. From frontline heroes to first-time fundraisers, our tools empower you to help others. This is our mission. This is Donorbox, helping you help others.